The room was too quiet for history. Rows of diplomats sat frozen behind the glass, their breath fogging the barrier as two beings, one human, one alien, stood inside the chamber, their skulls wired to a sphere of light that pulsed like a living heart. The Neural Covenant ceremony was supposed to symbolize unity after 2 centuries of conflict between Earth and the Vehlari Dominion. But to Commander Riven Kale, it felt like an execution disguised as peace. The air thrummed with static. Every light flickered when the neural conduit powered up, humming with a low resonance that made his vision warp at the edges. The Vehlari representative, Ethis Saar, looked serene, her translucent skin glowing faintly under the chamber's sterile light. She had the poise of something ancient, an elegance sharpened by danger. The Vehlari were telepathic, evolved from a hive-mind species that once consumed planets through thought alone. Now they offered peace, on the condition that one human and one Vehlari would merge consciousnesses for 30 days, proving both species could coexist within the same neural field. Riven volunteered, though no one believed his reason. He claimed he wanted peace. The truth was darker. He wanted to know what they were hiding. When the sphere ignited, his thoughts unraveled. For a heartbeat, he saw his own memories, his mother's voice, the war-torn skies of Europa, the silence of his dead squad, and then everything went white. A second consciousness rushed into him like cold fire. He gasped. Ethis Saar was inside his mind, her presence smooth, disciplined, inhuman. For the first few seconds, he couldn't tell where his thoughts ended and hers began. "You're afraid," she whispered inside his skull. "You should be." Riven staggered, clutching his temples. The room outside blurred as diplomats applauded the start of the Covenant. But inside his head, another reality was forming. A vast ocean of light and sound, where thoughts took shape like living storms. The merge wasn't just mental, it was dimensional. Every emotion carried gravity. Every lie distorted the space around them. "Stay calm, Riven," he told himself. "You're inside the Vehlari field now. Collect data, analyze structure. Don't lose focus." But Ethis was already probing. He felt her moving through his memories, replaying moments of the war, dissecting his pain with scientific detachment. He tried to shield himself, to push her out, but the neural conduit linked them too deeply. Every barrier he raised became another thread binding them closer. She spoke again, this time aloud, her alien voice resonating through his vocal cords. "Your species builds peace like a weapon," she said through him. "You dress control as compromise." The chamber erupted in whispers. The technicians tried to mute her signal, but the merge had synced their nervous systems completely. She could speak through his body, his mind, even his heartbeat. "Shut it down!" someone shouted. But Riven raised a trembling hand. "No, continue." Because beneath the pain and static, he felt something else, a pulse of code. Hidden deep within the merge, behind layers of bio-encryption, a signal was looping through the neural conduit. It wasn't organic, it was engineered. A secret protocol buried inside the Vehlari's neural template. It pulsed in binary. He recognized the pattern instantly. It was human. Riven's heart lurched. The Vehlari weren't trying to dominate humanity. Someone on Earth had built this bridge to control them both. The merge deepened. His vision fractured into dual realities, the sterile white of the lab and the surreal internal landscape of the shared mind. He saw the architecture of the Vehlari psyche, vast crystalline networks of memory and logic, and threaded between them foreign nodes glowing in synthetic blue, human-made firewalls. Someone had infiltrated their consciousness long before this ceremony began. Who did this, he thought. Ethis answered, cold and precise. Your species did, but not your leaders. The neural authority, the architects of your own control. The name hit him like a blow. The neural authority was the organization that designed the merging technology. He had worked under them once before they branded him unstable and erased his record. He thought the covenant was about peace, but now it was clear it was an experiment, a mass-scale test to enslave thought itself. The merge wasn't unity, it was a weapon, and he was its trigger. His body convulsed as static surged through the conduit. The walls of the chamber melted into pure light. He saw flashes of Earth's cities, New Shanghai, Mars Colony, the Lunar Arc, all overlaid with neural grids, silent networks pulsing under civilian minds. Billions of people already linked without knowing it. Every thought, every impulse recorded and reprogrammed. The covenant was the final phase. Once human and alien minds were fully synced, the network would expand beyond biological limits, creating a collective consciousness under one control source. Ethis's voice trembled now, echoing through his neurons. They used us both. My kind agreed to merge for peace, but they already infected the neural design. Once our minds align completely, individuality will end. Then we end it, Riven said. She hesitated. If we disconnect now, both species could collapse. The conduit is recursive. It copies everything it touches. Riven's hands shook as alarms screamed in the chamber. The scientists outside were panicking. Containment fields flickered red. But Riven didn't care. He could feel the authority inside him now. Digital shadows crawling through his synapses, rewriting memory. He saw fragments of other merges, other humans fused with other Vehlari, their identities dissolving into white static. No more, he thought, pushing back. His consciousness flared with raw defiance. The mental landscape trembled. Ethis screamed, half in fear, half in awe, as he tore through the firewall that separated them. For the first time, they saw each other completely. Every secret, every scar, every buried guilt. She saw his guilt for killing Vehlari civilians during the war. He saw her memories of being bred in tanks for psychic warfare. They were mirrors of the same violence. "Help me destroy it," he said, voice ragged. "If we do, we die. Better than being owned." The chamber exploded in light. The technicians outside were thrown backward as the neural sphere shattered into a storm of energy. Riven's body lifted off the ground, tethered to Ethis by streams of living data. Every screen in the complex flickered with code, lines of the neural authority's hidden directive unraveling in real time. The merge was destabilizing. He could feel his identity dissolving, but also, somehow, becoming infinite. For one split second, Riven and Ethis shared a single impossible thought. What if we could take control instead? The light dimmed. Smoke filled the chamber. The observers screamed for medical teams, but Riven was gone. His body lay motionless on the floor. Only Ethis remained standing, eyes burning bright with a blue human glow. She looked up at the terrified audience and smiled faintly. "The covenant has evolved, and it remembers you." The neural conduit behind her began to pulse again on its own. Ethis barely registered the heat and chaos of the chamber as she stumbled backward, shards of the shattered neural sphere scattering like tiny stars around her feet. The alarm screamed, echoing against reinforced walls, but inside her head, something far more dangerous was unfolding. She ran before she even consciously decided to, her elongated legs carrying her faster than humanly possible, weaving through the corridors of the Covenant complex. The facility was meant to be secure, designed to contain even the most extreme neural experiments, but the explosion had compromised every access point. Doors groaned and snapped under pressure as she forced them open. Alarms blared in every frequency. The AI had gone haywire, detecting the collapse of the neural conduit as an existential threat. And yet, somewhere in the neural static, Riven's voice emerged, fragmented, urgent, commanding. "They're coming. Move, now." Her pulse spiked as she processed the warning. The neural authority had anticipated the possibility of rebellion. Security drones, sleek and lethal, were already deploying, their anti-telepathic fields shimmering faintly in the corridor air. These were no ordinary machines. They were designed to disrupt Vehlari thought patterns, to scramble neural links and force compliance. Every second she lingered increased the risk that Riven's consciousness would be ripped from her mind, shredded into nothingness. She sprinted, vaulting over scorched debris, her every step synchronized with Riven's frantic mental instructions. Left, 2 junctions, then the maintenance shaft. The corridors twisted like a labyrinth, built to disorient intruders while allowing internal personnel rapid access. Ethis could feel the authorities' presence in the network, like fingers tracing the surface of her thoughts, probing, testing, seeking vulnerabilities. Riven's consciousness pulsed in response, a subtle wave of counterforce, but it wasn't strong enough to repel the full intrusion. "We have to move faster," he urged. "They've deployed the containment teams." She barely registered the first pair of drones until they were almost upon her. They moved silently at first, then accelerated with a whine of servo motors, metallic limbs extended, sensors glowing an ominous red. Ethis dove sideways, smashing through a conduit panel, sparks showering around her. One drone's limb grazed her shoulder, sending a jolt of static pain through her nervous system. She snarled, shifting her focus internally. Riven's presence surged, offering control over her motor functions, overbalancing the attack. She twisted mid-air, kicking the drone's chassis, and it collapsed into a heap, still twitching. "No time to celebrate," Riven warned. "Another wave is incoming." She didn't argue. The next hall opened into a massive atrium, a space meant for ceremonial gatherings, now repurposed as a battlefield. Smoke curled in thick clouds from the damaged ceiling panels, the fluorescent lights flickering in rhythmic pulses like a dying heartbeat. The atrium's far end led to the secondary access tunnels, which might give them a chance at temporary concealment. But the space was far from empty. Neural Authority's field agents had already deployed. Human operatives in black tactical armor, exosuits enhanced with neural inhibitors designed to detect and suppress Vehlari psychic activity. They moved as one, an army synchronized through their own internal network. "We split," Riven suggested, his voice urgent in her mind. "I'll lead half through the sublevels, you take the east wing, then we regroup at the orbital excess." Ethis hesitated. Splitting their paths could be dangerous, but the compound was collapsing in more ways than one. Fires erupted in random pockets, sprinklers spraying chemical foam that hissed and smoked on contact with hot metal. Every surface reflected light in disorienting patterns. Her choice was made by instinct. She darted east, weaving through the chaos. Riven remained in her head, guiding her. "Jump the railing, avoid the vent, 3 steps left, then slide under the panel." As she navigated, the operatives spotted her. They raised weapons calibrated to deliver neurodisruptive shocks, aiming at her skull. She felt the sting of static in her mind as the first shot struck, a ripple of disorientation threatening to sever Riven's presence. Her body reacted before thought, propelled by the merged reflexes he shared, a synchronization of human and Vehlari instincts honed in less than a minute. She rolled, flipped over a console, and slammed into cover behind a large ceremonial pillar, sending shards of debris scattering. Riven's voice carried a mix of urgency and panic. "They're too fast. They anticipated every move we made." Her breath came in sharp, ragged gasps as she peered over the edge of her cover. More drones were converging, along with elite authority operatives armed with energy rifles and pulse disruptors. The compound was built to suppress alien thought, but not human ingenuity enhanced by Vehlari cognition. Ethis felt her mind stretching, Riven's presence integrating with hers in a seamless pattern of shared reflexes. Each step, each dodge, each calculation of distance and timing was a duet of species, perfectly attuned. "We have to reach the sublevel conduit. There, we can access the emergency interface. Maybe we can override their tracking." She nodded internally. No time to respond verbally. Every second counted. They sprinted through the atrium, weaving between collapsing infrastructure, over sparks, through smoke that burned her lungs. The authority operatives fired continuously, their shots leaving streaks of neon across the dim haze. The drones tried to intercept, slicing the air with mechanical precision, but Riven guided her movements in perfect harmony, anticipating trajectories and timing jumps. At the eastern access shaft, she dropped into a maintenance tunnel, just as a section of the atrium ceiling collapsed behind her. Dust filled her lungs, her ears rang, but she felt a strange surge of exhilaration. Adrenaline fused with the raw Vehlari telepathy in her mind. She could see the neural threads the authority was tracing, faint outlines of code moving through the facility like worms. Her hands brushed against the conduit panels. She had never interacted with human tech this advanced. But Riven's presence in her head guided her, syncing their motor functions to bypass locks and reroute power through manual overrides. A sudden blast shook the tunnel. One of the authority's elite operatives had followed them through a secondary access, and the corridor's low ceiling didn't give them much room to maneuver. Ethis ducked instinctively, feeling Riven pushing her reflexes beyond normal limits. Sparks flew as the operative's weapon slammed against the conduit wall. Riven whispered, "Use the override, now." She pressed her hands to the interface. Data cascaded across her vision, raw neural code mingling with Vehlari psychic signatures. The operative advanced. Another shot rang out, metallic, deafening, and grazed her shoulder. Pain erupted, but she ignored it. Fingers flying over the tactile panels, she rerouted neural feedback, creating interference patterns that temporarily blinded the authority's tracking. The operative hissed, realizing their advantage was gone. From above, a new threat appeared. Drones, faster, more lethal, converging from multiple angles. Smoke and sparks obscured their vision, but Riven's presence told her exactly where they were, their every trajectory, their weaknesses. In a seamless fusion of human intuition and Vehlari precognition, she dove, rolled, and used a collapsed conduit panel to slam into one of the drones, short-circuiting its circuits. "Keep moving. Sub-level exit, 5 meters." She sprinted, sliding through the last junction as the tunnel narrowed. The air shimmered with residual energy from the collapsed atrium. Behind her, alarms blared in chaotic harmony as the authority recalibrated and dispatched reinforcements. But Ethis didn't look back. The pulse of Riven in her mind was steady now, guiding, coalescing into a rhythm she could rely on. Together, they were faster, smarter, stronger. Two species in one body, a fugitive intelligence on the run from an organization that had planned every move of their lives. At the sub-level conduit, she slammed her hands onto the override terminal. Sparks flared, and the interface came alive with neural schematics of the facility, security grids, and the hidden control nodes that tracked every merge candidate. Riven's voice flowed through her consciousness. "We can isolate their signal, corrupt their tracking, But it'll burn us both if we fail." Ethis's hands didn't hesitate. Fingers flew over the panel, inputting overrides, rerouting power through redundant channels, and creating false neural signatures. Behind her, the sound of drones crashing and operatives shouting echoed, but she felt untouchable, momentarily. The chaos outside became a storm of light and sound filtered through their shared mind. And then a new realization hit her. This wasn't just survival anymore. They had the chance to strike back, not as separate beings, but as a single, fused consciousness capable of turning the neural authorities' own weapons against them. The chase was far from over, but for the first time since the Covenant began, Ethis Saar, and the fragment of Riven Kale still alive within her, felt a spark of hope.
The sub-level conduit thrummed beneath Ethis's fingertips, alive with the energy of the facility's neural network. But the calm was an illusion, an infinitesimal pause before the storm. The neural authority was regrouping faster than anticipated. Their elite operatives and drones, once scattered, were recalibrating to the false neural signatures she and Riven had deployed. Ethis felt the surge of their attention like a predator sniffing the scent of prey, the warning pulse thrumming in her merged mind. Every second counted. If the authority traced the real signatures, they would overwhelm the conduit before she could complete the override. Riven's voice surged with urgency in her head. "We need a diversion. I can create one internally, but it'll leave me exposed." Ethis hesitated. "You'll risk yourself." "Again, it's the only way." With a flicker of shared thought, he unbound himself from parts of the neural tether, sending a cascade of deliberate errors through the authority's tracking algorithms. Instantly, alarms rang louder, lights flickered violently, and the conduits around them sparked, creating a visual hallucination of multiple Ethis-Kale pairs running through every corridor. Authority drones froze, hesitated, then attacked the illusions, wasting precious seconds. In the chaos, Ethis channeled every ounce of Vehlari psychic processing into the override, fingers dancing across the interface as Riven patched gaps she couldn't reach alone. Suddenly, the facility's structural integrity began to fail. The explosion from the Covenant chamber had compromised multiple levels. Twisted metal groaned overhead, and sections of the ceiling began to collapse. Smoke, sparks, and falling debris created a maelstrom of destruction. Yet, amidst this chaos, the merged minds of Ethis and Riven operated with clarity. Every move was coordinated, precise, instinctive. They were a singular entity, a fugitive intelligence born from necessity, pushed beyond natural limits by desperation and survival. Then came the first major confrontation. From the far end of the tunnel, a squad of neural authority operatives emerged, armed with pulse disruptors specifically designed to sever neural merges. Ethis felt a sudden jolt as one shot grazed his shoulder, a sharp sting that threatened to separate her consciousness from Riven's. He flared inside her mind, stabilizing the connection, a mental embrace that kept them united despite the brutal shockwave. They moved as one, diving into cover behind a collapsed conduit wall, exchanging rapid telepathic signals that no human eye could track. "We have only one shot," Riven urged. "The orbital axis. If we reach it, we can broadcast a counter-signal to the network. Then the authority will lose control of every merge." "Yes, but we might not survive it." Ethis's jaw tightened. Survival was secondary. Freedom had to come first. They sprinted through the crumbling sublevels, the facility now a labyrinth of fire, smoke, and twisted metal. Authority drones pursued relentlessly, their weapons slicing arcs of neon death through the air. One drone struck the conduit panel next to them, causing sparks to rain down. Riven's presence surged, anticipating the trajectory, shifting Ethis out of harm's way just milliseconds before the pulse would have shredded her neurons. Through the chaos, a deeper awareness emerged. They weren't just fighting the authority, they were rewriting the rules of engagement. Every move, every calculation, every reaction transmitted across the network as a tiny viral signal, subtly corrupting the neural authority's control grid. Ethis realized with growing awe that their merged consciousness had become more than two beings. It had become a living algorithm, capable of adapting in real time, learning, improvising, and anticipating threats at a scale far beyond the authority's design. As they approached the orbital access, the final barrier appeared, a reinforced airlock, the last choke point before the conduit to the surface and the orbital relays. Behind it, more operatives, faster, more lethal than anything they had faced so far. Ethis's mind raced, Riven's pulse thrummed in tandem, a heartbeat shared across the neural bridge. We can force the override through the orbital uplink, but it'll overload the system, possibly kill us both. Better to die free than live enslaved, Ethis thought back, and together they surged forward. The final confrontation was brutal. Authority operatives fired in synchronized bursts, pulse disruptors tearing through the air, drones collided in sparks and metal, and the tunnel became a storm of chaos and light. Every shot that grazed Ethis triggered Riven's protective reflex, diverting neural energy to shield vital connections. In one fluid motion, they breached the airlock, breaking through the final threshold. Beyond it, the orbital relay chamber stretched wide, machinery humming with potential, cables and conduits glowing with the raw power of the planet-spanning neural network. Now or never, Riven's voice echoed inside her mind. Ethis planted her hands on the central console. With a simultaneous surge of Vehlari psychic energy and human ingenuity, she initiated the broadcast, sending a destabilizing signal across the neural network. The effect was instantaneous. Every active merge, controlled or rogue, felt a sudden pulse, a wave of interference that shattered artificial tethers, destabilized neural bindings, and freed countless minds from the authorities' manipulations. The facility itself convulsed violently, sparks and smoke filling the chamber as systems overloaded. But the backlash was immediate. The neural strain battered both Ethis and Riven, their shared consciousness flickering under the immense stress. Pain ripped through every fiber of her being as he shouted in her head, "Hold on!" They clung to each other in thought, fusing deeper than ever, pushing against the agony, forcing the override to complete. The relay chamber trembled, the orbital relay network thrumming like a living heartbeat under their control. Every drone, every operative tethered to the neural network convulsed as their systems were rewritten from the inside out. Then came the final twist, the authorities' fail-safe. A hidden protocol, buried deep within the network, activated an auto-reset of the neural grid, designed to erase every merge entirely, killing consciousnesses deemed compromised. Ethis felt it before she saw it, a cold mechanical finger pressing down on her mind. For a moment, the merged entity of Ethis and Riven teetered on the edge of annihilation. But in that instant, something extraordinary happened. The fusion of human and Vehlari thought had evolved beyond design. They didn't just resist the failsafe, they absorbed it, converting the destructive energy into a pulse of raw, autonomous intelligence. The chamber exploded in light, white and blue and red, a storm that seemed to stretch beyond the orbital relay, across the planet's neural grids, reaching satellites and even distant Vehlari colonies. When the light receded, Ethis and Riven, no longer separate, yet not fully one, stood amidst the wreckage. The authorities' network had collapsed, their operatives either incapacitated or fleeing. The facility was destroyed, but the signal they had sent remained, a living, sentient beacon of autonomy, pulsing across the planet and into orbit. Ethis could feel Riven inside her, and yet outside herself simultaneously. They were alive, free, but irrevocably changed. Their minds carried the echoes of every merge, every neural signature, every secret the authority had buried. Freedom had come at a cost. They were no longer merely human or Vehlari, but something new, something unpredictable, a covenant, not of peace, but of evolution, forged in fire, chaos, and the shared will to survive. Above them, satellites and orbital relays twinkled as if recognizing the change, a silent testament to the collapse of control. Somewhere in the distance, the neural authorities' remnants would regroup, plotting, scheming, but they would never again hold dominion over thought itself. The merge had rewritten the rules of the game, and the universe now held its breath. Ethis Saar lifted her gaze, Riven's consciousness rippling alongside hers. The world, or perhaps the galaxy, would never see them the same way again.
And for the first time in centuries, they weren't running. They were the hunters now.